Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by a gift from the Hartwig family and viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly, and our topics this week: the KC establishment gives the e-tax an A+. Taxing the patience of the Kansas Teachers Union, Governor Brownback talks about merit pay. And if Jeff Rowe receives merit pay, he must be getting a lot from Ted Cruz, plus roast and toast. But we start with our Newsmaker segment and welcome the legendary Kansas City Royals Hall of Famer, number 20 second baseman Frank White. After his playing and coaching career ended, White worked as a color commentator and analyst for Royals play-by-play and post-game broadcast. As much as we might like to talk about baseball with Frank, we're going to focus on his new career in politics. Less than 2 years ago, White scored a landslide victory in his race for a seat on the Jackson County Legislature. And following the recent resignation of Mike Sanders, he's been named Jackson County Executive. Frank White, welcome to Ruckus, sir.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here.
Which is more fun, baseball or politics?
You have to go with what you know best. I knew baseball best, and this is fun because it's a great learning experience. It's a big challenge, big responsibility, but I think I'm up to it.
It's been a year and a half or so since you ran for office. What prompted you to get into politics initially?
Well, I just look back over my whole career and growing up here in Kansas City and being involved with so many different charities, so many different agencies throughout the years. And in a way, you're already in there because of what you envision for your community that you grew up in. I lived east of Troost in the 3rd District, and that's the area that everybody say is not a very good area, east of Troost. And I just really felt like I needed to be someplace where I could probably make the most difference, and that's when I decided to run for the legislature.
Well, why did you feel it appropriate to accept the job as county executive?
Well, I kicked it around in my head, and I had so much support, not only from some of the people surrounding Mike and so forth, but I had a lot of support from members of the legislature. They've really felt that I was the right person to move into this position and lead the county. And after a lot of soul searching, then the old question comes, if not you, who else? And I really feel like I have leadership skills from my days in baseball, and I have an ability to communicate with people, and I thought that this would be a great opportunity for me.
Well, your service as county executive lasts until there's an election in November.
Yes.
And there's speculation. I think you said you might run. You don't know for sure. Other people, I think, have talked about running. Have you decided yet? You've been in the job a little while. Have you decided that you'll run?
I've only been in it a week.
Well, that's long enough.
But it seems like it's been longer for sure, Mike. But it's, I've got till February to make a decision, and I'm just going to keep getting a better understanding of the job and what it entails and what the responsibilities are. But I do like what I'm doing at this point.
Would it be safe to say you're leaning toward running?
Yes, it would be safe to say that, yes.
In your comments to the county legislature after you were named county executive, you concluded by saying, let's go make things happen. What things?
Well, first of all, we have things. It would be new things. It would be giving back to the people, giving the people a better understanding of the county, especially the people who live in the city. A lot of times you live in the city, you pay county taxes, but you envision the county being Eastern Jackson County, and you forget that you are part of county, and you want to be able to do some things in the community from a county perspective that people can say tax dollars are working for us, and not just portion of the county, but the entire county.
Well, do you have some new initiatives you're planning to announce in the near future?
Well, not at this point. Right now, being in there for a week, I'm just getting to know most of it. I know some of the initiatives that Mike had put in place through the first year on the legislature, but right now I think my main focus right now is to deal with that jail situation, make sure that we continue to improve that situation. As on the legislature, we we budgeted money to help improve that situation there and just try to make that a little more efficient and make sure that all the things that need to be done, we had the recommendations from the task force on some of the changes that need to be made over there. So just making sure that those things get done. I think that is a priority.
Anything new in the FBI investigation of the jail that you can share with us?
No, I haven't had a meeting with the FBI on that. Mainly we're just working off of the recommendations of the task force.
One of your predecessors, the second man to serve as Jackson County Executive, Mike White, was quoted recently as saying, "The county executive has more power than the Kansas City mayor." Do you think that's true?
I never thought about it that way. I mean, I just think that you just have to go in and do what's necessary to get the job done. I really wouldn't say that, not at this point.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Pleasure to see you again. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you, Mike. My pleasure. Thank you.
That is Jackson County Executive Frank White. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Steve Glorioso is a media and political consultant. John Stevens is the head of Rock Hill Strategic. Lisa Johnston is a columnist and political consultant. And Patrick Toohey is based in Kansas City with the Show Me Institute, a libertarian think tank. Good to have all of you with us today. Kansas City establishment seems to be in sync on at least one major issue, the earnings tax. The 1% tax is paid by everyone who lives in or works in Kansas City, Missouri, and produces about $230 million a year for the local government. A proposed bill from state senator and attorney general candidate, Republican Kurt Schaefer, would, if passed, end the e-tax in both Kansas City and St. Louis. Schaefer has received considerable financial support for his attorney general campaign from St. Louis businessman Rex Singfield, who has long been critical of the e-tax. Many government and civic leaders from Kansas City traveled to the state capitol to speak in strong opposition to ending the tax. So after that show of support, is it a foregone conclusion that Schaefer's idea is ill-timed and likely to fail? Patrick?
Well, as I understand it, Schaefer's plan would have ended the earnings tax all at once. It didn't include a phase out, and that's probably not a good idea. But the earnings tax is bad policy. It is a regressive flat tax that starts at the first dollar you earn. It is absolutely awful on the working poor in Kansas City. And what does Kansas City do with the money we collect in the earnings tax? We package it, put a bow on it, and hand it to the wealthy in Kansas City so they can develop in the nice parts of town. There are plenty of cities around the country that do not have any earnings tax, but of course you would expect people who make their living from taxpayer dollars to gnash their teeth and wring their hands at the idea of not having every opportunity to take more and more from the public.
How likely is it that the state legislature will take this action?
I doubt that they would say to St. Louis and Kansas City, you're going to end the earnings tax all at once immediately. I just don't see that as
I should
likely.
point out, just for full disclosure, that you work for the Show Me Institute, which was co-founded by Rex Singfield and
that's right.
Crosby Kemper III. So what would happen, Steve, if the earnings tax were ended in Kansas City?
Well, first of all, when King Rex from St. Louis, and I heard he's really mad now because we still have an NFL team, so he'll really go after Kansas City now, is the fact that it is his campaign slogan when he did the statewide initiative was "Let voters decide." We have an election in April to renew this the e-tax. What happened to let voters decide? I mean, is Will Krause and Schaefer and all these hypocrites who talk about local control and let voters decide, they want to pass a bill that denies us the ability to govern ourselves? I mean, this is beyond hypocritical. The earnings tax is 40% of the general fund. 3/4 of it goes to pay for police, fire, ambulances, etc. Half of it's paid by out-of-towners. If you're a senior, you should be outraged. You don't pay the earnings tax right now, but the only way to replace it would be to go the sales tax, which is more regressive, and property tax to make up the hole in the public safety budget. So it's just, if it weren't an election year, you wouldn't hear a peep out of these people.
Lisa, we hear that voters are angry, feel like nobody is listening to them. 5 years ago, when this e-tax was on the ballot in Kansas City, 78% of the voters voted yes, retain the e-tax. Do you think things have changed enough that we might not see that margin?
I think that it will still pass with a wide margin. And I think that people know how critical and how important those resources are, as Steve was mentioning. They fund things that are absolutely necessary for the city. And I was going to make the exact same point that Steve made, which is that it's more regressive.
All you liberals stick together.
No, it's a happy accident, I guess. But it's the case that it's more regressive to go the sales tax route. And so if you were to move away from this, what do you do? How do you get the resources? And I think it's not very realistic to say that they could just operate without those funds, because they are really critical.
I do think one thing that is going to come out of the Jefferson City discussion is that it's going to elevate the local discussion with this. And I do worry that the margins might be a little bit tighter. I think ultimately people will understand that the e-tax is a valuable piece of the budget and critical to Kansas City. But I do think it will elevate the discussion by having that discussion in Jefferson City, even though it will go nowhere in Jefferson City.
Let me bring up a point that Patrick made. No other city in the metro area has an earnings tax, yet people from Kansas City use facilities in Overland Park, Prairie Village, Kansas City, Kansas, everywhere else. Why is there no earnings tax anywhere but in Kansas City, Missouri?
Well, because I think Kansas City, Missouri, one reason is it is fundamentally structurally different. It was the core of the city. It has a much larger array of services and a much larger in and out transient population for employment and other services than other parts of the metropolitan area, which grew out of Kansas City, Missouri.
Right.
One of the key questions is, do you or do you not believe in local control? When we say let the voters decide, then shouldn't they have the ability to do that?
Like on a downtown convention hotel?
Well, exactly.
Yes, exactly right. So the mayor doesn't want people to vote on convention hotels. He doesn't want people to pay on to vote on TIF projects. Of course, what we hear from proponents of the earnings tax isn't a defensive policy, but an argument that sounds like a junkie. I need one more fix. You can't cut me off. What the earnings tax does is we've kind of given, it's not the sign of a healthy economy. What we've done is we've given up being competitive and luring people here because we've got low taxes and good services. What we've done is we've given up. People are fleeing the city, and so what do? We try to tax them on their way out.
Does the earnings tax in Kansas City hurt the efforts at economic development? To bring in companies from out of town?
Absolutely it does. And we've got an economic development corporation whose job is to give people tax cuts in order to bring them in. So,
I want to wrap this up, and I know you don't speak for Rex Singfield,
Sure.
but is it your sense that he will campaign through his organization in Kansas City to try to defeat the earnings tax?
I have no
I would
idea.
assume he would, since he did
Well,
5 years ago.
5 years ago, someone. It was done through anonymous secret donations by the far right.
Well, the spokesman
They
was
spent
Woody
about
Kozad.
About $400,000 to try to defeat
Yeah,
it.
but Woody, who's on the panel
Yeah.
quite often, Woody was the
That's
primary
right.
spokesman
He was.
against the earnings tax in Kansas City 5 years ago. Kansas Governor Sam Brownback says he is interested in a plan to reward meritorious teachers in Kansas with merit pay. And that means another demerit for Brownback from some of his frequent critics. An official of the Kansas National Education Association, Mark DeSetti, says merit pay creates, and I quote now, a world where teachers don't cooperate with each other because, by God, if I help you get better, I lose my merit pay. The Senate Democratic leader, Anthony Hensley, says when merit pay is determined by the principal in a school, the teachers who do the most brown-nosing will get the most money. Other critics say school boards already have the power to grant merit pay, so Brownback's plan is unnecessary. What do you think? Any reason to consider merit pay for teachers in Kansas, John?
Well, honestly, I think merit pay has been proven in most places not to work. I mean, Governor Deal in Georgia just decided not to move forward with the plan. Texas canceled the plan after, 2 years? I do think there could be an honest discussion about it if Governor Brownback and many others in Topeka had not eviscerated a funding formula that worked, if they were not sitting on the 39th ranked teacher pay and falling. If they actually had built some trust with educators in the state and worked with educators over the last few years, I think you might have an honest discussion about local control of merit pay. But currently, no, absolutely not.
Lisa, I know you've spent a lot of years during your career in education, so let me ask you about these comments from a union official, a union designed to represent teachers, and a Democratic leader, and the Democratic Party and the NEA are about one and the same. One said teachers wouldn't cooperate if there were merit pay, and principals would only give merit pay to those teachers who are brown-nosers. Now, are those remarks not insulting to the teaching profession?
Well, to some extent, I think they could be interpreted as insulting, but I think there's a grain.
Well, you wouldn't interpret them as complimentary,
Well,
would you?
Certainly not. But there's a grain of truth in it. Now, I will say that personally, I think that merit pay could potentially be approached in a way that was productive, but you would need to be very careful about the system and what you're rewarding. So, for example, not only should you reward the outcomes in the classroom, but you should reward mentoring to encourage collaboration and cooperation rather than ensuring competition. And there are a variety of things that could be examined and could be put in place to try to ensure that it wasn't just the principal's favorite teachers and that it didn't create this dog-eat-dog culture. But my question at this point in time is, where is the money coming from for this merit pay? Because we have this fiscal crisis, and I feel like it was a strategic move for the governor to bring this up right now. It's almost like talking about repainting your shutters when your foundation is crumbling. So, you know, I'm not opposed to the idea of merit pay, and I like very much the idea across all professions of rewarding the outstanding performers. I think that's great. It just needs to be done very, very carefully.
I think Governor Brownback said merit pay would not be introduced immediately, but it would come along with a new funding formula for schools, and he doesn't expect that to happen in this legislative session. You've done some teaching at the college level, I know, Steve, and I taught for a short time in high school, some in college, and it does seem to me it would be very difficult to establish fair criteria to determine who gets merit pay.
That is the problem, the essence of the problem. I agree that there ought to be merit in all professions, but it's very hard to avoid favoritism, et cetera. When I was at UMKC in graduate school, I led us, you can't believe this, I was a campus radical.
I can believe that.
I wanted to have students evaluate their teachers. Well, 20 years later, when I was taught some courses at UMKC, at the end of the year, they passed out these evaluations. And I said, what the heck? Why am I being evaluated by these students? But, I mean, things like that would help. Where, you know, you have 20 people doing an evaluation of a teacher, you would eliminate some of the favoritism by having group merit evaluations.
Well, John, during my tragic career, I've also worked for a while in government, and the federal government has merit pay, and the private sector has merit pay, so it's not something that can't be made workable.
No, once again, I do think that an honest, fair discussion on merit pay could work. It's, as everyone has said, I think there is a lot of value to considering merit pay when it's done in such a way that we bemoan this idea of teaching to the test, right? That is something that has always been one of the very few statewide merit systems that have worked have been bonuses based solely on year-over-year percentage increase to standardized test scores. And I think you have to break that model. You have to look at merit pay that works, that's at a local level, that understands the neighborhoods and the communities around them.
Patrick.
Well, I certainly don't know on what basis Kansas teachers unions reject this plan, because there is no plan. There are no specifics the governor has put forward. Now, we can look around the country and say research on merit pay for teachers has been a mixed bag. And until we know the details, you know, we ought to kind of keep our powder dry. But the status quo in Kansas and Missouri about how we pay teachers, simply based on how long you've been there or how many post-graduate degrees you have, has no correlation to how good a teacher is. It simply preserves the union. You stay there, you get more. I think it robs new teachers of the opportunity to earn for their time there.
And people complain about the lack of money for Kansas education. The Kansas education budget is only, what, $4 billion a year? A significant portion of the GOP hopes the party is on cruise control in the race for the presidential nomination. Texas U.S. Senator and Harvard-trained attorney Ted Cruz is near the top of the major polls and is thought by many analysts to be in a two-way race with Donald Trump. The Cruz campaign has a significant link to Kansas City. Jeff Rowe, founder of Axiom Strategies, is running the campaign, making the jump from local and state races to the national scene. Rowe, who has appeared occasionally on Ruckus, is known for his take-no-prisoners approach to winning elections. Whether Cruz wins or not, Rowe has clearly enhanced his reputation nationwide. So let's talk about the Cruz campaign and the race for the nomination in both major parties. We'll start with Lisa. Can Ted Cruz beat Donald Trump?
I think it's unlikely, and the reason I say that is because he is now getting a pile-on. He's being attacked from all angles. The establishment is certainly angry with him and doesn't want to see him succeed, and now Donald Trump is piling on as well. There's the obvious issue of his Canadian birth, and establishment politicians and legal experts have come out and said this is an unresolved question. We have his unfortunate remark about New York values, his forgotten loans from Goldman Sachs, the governor in Iowa coming out and saying he needs to be defeated, and then Donald Trump now on the campaign trail saying, you know, these things are an issue. So I think he's getting it from all angles. He may squeak out Iowa. I think that's still in question, but I don't see him being viable in the long term to become the nominee.
It was kind of funny because Trump and Cruz were kind to each other for quite a while, and then Trump started questioning Cruz's citizenship, and then Cruz was kind of harsh about Trump, and then this is my favorite, we'll take a look at it, Trump saying Cruz is just not a nice man.
But he's a nasty guy. Nobody likes him. Nobody in Congress likes him. Nobody likes him anywhere once they get to know him. He's a very, he's got an edge that's not good. You can't make deals with people like that, and it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the country. Very nasty guy.
Before we leave the Republicans, Steve, you know Jeff Rowe. You've worked with him on projects.
Nonpartisan projects.
Nonpartisan
yes.
projects, public service projects.
There you go.
So you know that business of political consulting, and you know Jeff. This is a big move for him, is it not?
Yes.
And doesn't this
Yes, it
guarantee
does,
him future
yes,
success?
It does elevate him to the national stage. Until Cruz, these problems are Cruz making. I mean, Jeff Rowe couldn't have prevented the fact that this guy, again, hypocrite, took $500,000 from Goldman Sachs and then criticized the bank bailout. But it was a loan. Anyway, the strategy looked brilliant up until about 2 weeks ago, and I think Jeff was being hailed. There's a long profile in the New Republic on Jeff that came out yesterday. But I think Cruz is less likely to win, in my opinion. I don't know inside Republican politics, but it appears that he peaked too soon, and now you're never moving ahead when you're on defense. So he's on defense.
Well, you do know Democratic politics well.
Occasionally.
Let me ask you this. Bernie Sanders, an avowed Democratic socialist, do you believe your party would actually nominate someone who is a socialist to run as president of the United States?
No, I don't believe so, and I hope not, even though I do like some of his positions, and I like certainly his bringing the issues up, which often is the role of an outsider, although he's not quite an outsider, he's a U.S. Senator. But I think it would be problematic. I mean, how do you sell things like he proposed nationalizing the oil and gas industries? And I mean, these are pretty socialist ideas, and even though we have socialism in our government, like Social Security is socialistic, he's pretty far out of the mainstream, and no, he would probably lead to a Donald Trump presidency if we did nominate him.
I'll wrap this up with Patrick. When did it become okay to identify yourself as a socialist in the United States, run for office, be successful, and at least come near to winning the Democratic nomination?
Well, and then you have the head of the National Democratic Party on Chris Matthews can't articulate the difference between a Democrat and a
neither can
socialist.
Mrs. Clinton. She was asked the same question and gave no answer.
The problem is because policymaking in the United States is awful. And we no longer are serious about how we're going to run our cities, how we're going to run our countries. We just demagogue. And so the simplest solutions, like what Bernie Sanders offers, seem good. You peel away, you spend a few minutes investigating them, and you realize it's absolutely awful, but we've kind of dumbed down political discourse.
But isn't there a possibility that by calling President Obama a socialist, that the Republicans have already played this hand and now it has no impact?
Well, I believe there are a lot of young people who have no idea what a socialist is and thinks it's a good idea because it's a free way to get a lot of money. Of course, it's not free.
Money.
Free money. Now it is time for Roast and Toast, where the Rockettes say yay or nay to people and events in the news. And we start this time with Steve Glorioso.
I would like to roast particularly the national media. I guess it does spill over to the local media too. Their inability to handle Donald Trump is really an embarrassment to their profession. They never make him answer a question. And the recent example is Nikki Haley, governor of South Carolina, talked about in her speech about angry voices are dividing the party and no way to lead the nation. They asked Donald Trump, and typically he never answers the question. He attacks Nikki Haley. She's soft on immigration. And the media basically then walks away. There's a great column or story today, Thursday, in the Star by Scott Cannon that sort of examines some of these things. But come on, do your job. Just if he isn't going to answer the question, stop interviewing him.
Lisa.
My roast is for Senator Claire McCaskill, who this week indicated that Republicans would use the communist imagery of a hammer and a sickle against Bernie Sanders were he to be the Democratic nominee. This is on par with a Sanders surrogate bringing up some of the unsavory topics from the 90s that Donald Trump has talked about in recent weeks. Senator McCaskill, it's obvious that you're trying to make up for 2008 and prove yourself a worthy surrogate so that you might obtain a position in a Clinton administration. However, this comment is over the line and completely unacceptable.
John.
Well, with the surge in violent crime and homicide that we've seen in Kansas City that's been spoken about a lot by Chief Forte and others, we've seen many people, police, elected officials and neighborhoods pull together to have a discussion about it. So I would like to roast the civic and business community for not being a part of that discussion and contributing more to the conversation of how we solve violent crime in our community.
Patrick.
Well, my roast this week is to the Kansas City Regional Transit Association, who has refused time and again to share with the public their plans for a streetcar extension. We cannot have good policy in Kansas City unless we discuss it openly.
And finally, with all the controversy about gun issues in recent weeks, the National Rifle Association has unleashed a clever new advertising campaign. So here's a toast to the presentation, if not necessarily the message itself. One of the most effective spots features a young mother.
I'm a mom, and just like millions of other women, that's why I own guns. We're responsible, we're law-abiding, and we're everything that makes America strong. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
And as I'm sure the panel agrees, the NRA, freedom's safest place. And so that is Ruckus for this week. Back next Thursday at 7. Now for the Ruckettes and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon saying thanks very much for watching and good night.